said, if you've seen me and everything I do is congruent with him, it's the same as seeing him. We're not in some oneness doctrine where the Father is literally the Son and vice versa and that kind of strange thing. But he's saying, look, I am the personification in flesh for you to see so that you can experience and understand and have a relationship with the Father. Everything I say comes from the Father. Everything I do is in line with the Father's desire. So when you see me, it's like seeing him. This is the ultimate expression of discipleship. And so here we have this idea of Yeshua saying, look, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And that's our goal, that if people would see you, they would see Yeshua, then they would see the Father. And this is that's your calling. Not your calling to go knock on doors, not to bother everybody in line at the supermarket, okay, or sitting next to you on the airplane or whatever, but it's your job is to walk this out and live it, and then that may be something that has people going, See, a lot of you walk in your relationships very challenged, right? You walk in a way that's very challenging relationships because you don't act like you know the person. Husbands and wives, you do a terrible job at this. Okay, not always, but when you struggle, it's because you're doing a terrible job at this. If you knew your wife or if you knew your husband, you would know what's pleasing in their sight and what's not. Not that you always have to just do that, because it's not like the relationship you have with the Father where he's always right and you're always wrong necessarily, unless you're in line with him. But when you're dealing with your children, the same thing. You should know what's pleasing. And children, you should know what pleases your parents. If you know them, you could then choose to do what's pleasing to them. Yeshua knew the Father and knows the Father so well that he can do only, if he chooses, only what pleases the Father. Does anybody really think that the apostle did anything more impressive than Yeshua ever did? No, of course not. But that's kind of what people think, isn't it? Oh, they were going to even do greater miracles and greater. And that's not what he's. And then works, they always think works means miracles. He says, you are going to do more Torah observance and help more people understand how to have the covenantal relationship than I have ever done in my short life with the few people that got to see me and hear me speak. You're going to now multiply that by 12, and then you're going to disciple others, which is what it was talking about in Matthew 28, when you're going to go out there and find the whomsoever wills. Those who were trained are going to go out and train more. Not everybody is just going to do everything. Those who are anointed and appointed and trained are going to go out and find more people to anoint and appoint and train. And then more works, volume-wise, right? Greater amounts of works are going to be done. He says, and whatever you ask in my authority, that I shall do. Well, that's a lot different than the idea that he becomes your magic genie, where somehow he has to do whatever you ask. No, when you ask things in his authority, he'll do it. Things that are not going to mess with his reputation, his identity, all the things that a name represents. Who he is, what he represents. He said, that I shall do. And I do it why? Because if you ask in my authority, and I do what you ask in my authority, this is in order that the Father might be esteemed in the Son. If he just did every dumb thing you asked, that's not going to esteem the Father at all. It's going to shame and embarrass the Father. And so he says, if you love me, guard my commands. Now in 1 John, remember this is John here, kind of giving us an understanding of what Yeshua did and said. And then in 1 John, he now connects it relationally to if you say you know him and don't keep the commandments or don't guard the commandments, you're lying. You don't have the relationship you think you have. Here Yeshua is saying, if you love me, you'll guard my commands. That's an expression of love. Torah observance is an expression of love. And we have this all throughout these parts I've taught you from Genesis on forward. You get into the place where he says, all throughout Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, especially Leviticus and those 4 books, you have nothing but him saying, I want you to love me with all you've got. And how do you do this? He says, this is how you do it, by not doing idolatry, by giving me your doing what I say, right? The whole covenant thing. If you agree to do what I say, I agree to take care of everything else. These are the expressions of love. So what is this helper? It's the Spirit of the truth. Now bear in mind, up until this point and everywhere else in the New Testament, Yeshua only refers to himself and the Father in terms of members of that family. There's no mention of a third entity anywhere. So for all you Trinitarians, I'm sorry to pop your bubble, okay? There is this other element, though, that is critical and true that we're going to be talking about here. But it's not ever personified as another entity or being. King James notwithstanding, where it puts the word Holy Ghost in there, all right? Now, I don't know about you, but as a kid, I was raised thinking that ghosts were not holy. Okay? These things that fly around of dead people. Okay? The Ruach is alive. Notice again in verse 17. The world does not see him or know him. The world cannot receive him. You cannot receive him when you're still the world. The below can't receive him. The flesh can't receive him. You have to shift and take that little step towards the above and towards the spirit, towards the heavenly, in order to receive him. And he pokes that little bubble because he says, none comes as the Father draws, and none goes to the Father except through me. Okay? And so that little piece of the puzzle where he touches your life and opens up that connection between the below and the above, then you're able to receive. He has to do that first. He has to connect you to the above. He who possesses, what does it mean to possess? In other words, you've taken ownership. Not ownership like you have authority over, but you own it. That this is for me. Right? The world is telling you, by the way, this is the one thing the Jews and the Christians agree about, that the Torah is not for you. They both agree. But the word says it is for everybody. And if you own that, if you're willing to possess and receive and own that it's for you, not own and then you have authority over it, but own that it's for you, that the covenant is for you. He says, he who possesses owns and recognizes that that my commands are for us, that they're for you, and guards them. It is he who loves me. But then we still have need of those that would encourage us and prod us like prophets and kind of say, let's get it done, let's do it. And we have teachers who explain what it is to do, how to do it, where to do it, when to do it, why to do it, etc. What not to do, why, where not to do it, etc. Shepherds to comfort us and make sure we stay out of trouble. Okay? Evangelists to help get people excited about the word and coming to hear the teacher. Apostles to plant congregations. I mean, he gives us all of that, and Paul explains these things to us. It's not that Paul invented any of these ideas. He said, these ideas you all know, but you have to understand that you need all of these things. And their purpose is to help us be perfected or complete to the fullness of what he intended us to be, as we come into the fullness of the unity of conformity into the image of the Son.